Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going where you might not expect, to India's space program.
No.
You might be thinking, India in space.
Right. Like what?
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
But trust me, this is a lot more impressive than you probably think.
Oh, absolutely.
We're going to be diving deep today into the Wikipedia page on the space industry of India. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, this is a really fascinating one.
Oh, this is a good one.
This isn't your typical boring Wikipedia scroll.
No.
We're talking launching rockets from a church.
It's amazing.
A budget that's going to make you scratch your head and wonder how the hell.
Right.
And a space industry that's already bringing billions of dollars into their economy.
It's incredible, yeah. It's a story of ambition, really clever solutions, and some really mind-blowing achievements.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Mhm.
India's space journey actually started way back in the 1960s.
Right.
And they were launching sounding rockets from a converted church in Kerala.
I mean, can you imagine?
Can you
Yeah.
imagine?
Starting from there.
Yeah, talk about humble beginnings.
Totally. Yeah.
So from those early experiments, they actually went on to launch their first satellite in 1975 from the Soviet Union.
Yeah, they had some help at the beginning, but then they very quickly developed their own, launch vehicles, the PSLV, which is really their workhorse rocket.
Yeah.
That's what they use to consistently put satellites into orbit.
Okay, so fast forward to today. I mean, they've launched over 100 domestic satellites.
It's incredible.
And get this, like 300 foreign satellites.
For something like 33 countries.
33 different countries.
Yeah.
They basically become like the go-to for anyone who wants to launch a satellite on the cheap.
Right.
And it's all thanks to the Indian Space Research Organization, ISRO. But here's the thing.
You're going to talk about the budget. Right.
You know it. They're doing all of this on a budget that is shockingly small.
Yeah.
Compared to like NASA, China.
Right.
We're talking like $1.6 billion.
Yeah.
Compared to NASA's over $25 billion.
Yeah.
And China's at over $18 billion.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
I mean, seriously, how do they do it?
I think it's a really interesting question. And I think a lot of people are starting to ask that.
Yeah.
As India's space program gets more attention, it really challenges, I think, our assumptions about how much money it actually takes to be successful.
Yeah.
Because they've got this really unique approach. I think when you have limited resources, it really forces you to be more creative and more resourceful. And that's exactly what ISRO has done. They've developed this whole culture of innovation where they really get the most out of every dollar.
Like every single dollar.
Yeah. And they've got some brilliant engineers figuring out incredibly efficient ways to build and launch this stuff without having to compromise on quality.
Okay, so they're like the ultimate space MacGyvers.
Right.
But I mean, if ISRO can do all this amazing stuff on such a small budget, does that mean that other space agencies are wasting money?
I think that's a really good question.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that's being debated more and more these days. I think ISRO's model is proving that sometimes constraints can actually be a good thing.
Yeah.
It can lead to more innovation and more efficiency.
So they're turning the whole game on its head.
Yeah.
But okay, enough about the budget. Let's talk about the impact of all this.
Yeah.
The Wikipedia article mentioned something crazy about how much India's space industry is actually contributing to their GDP.
Yeah, the numbers are incredible.
Yeah.
Between 2014 and 2024, they're expecting their space industry to contribute $60 billion to their GDP. It's a perfect example of how investing in space exploration can actually have a real positive impact on the economy of a country.
Okay, $60 billion. That's a big number.
It is a huge number.
What's driving that? I mean, it can't just be launching satellites, can it?
No, it's way more than just launching stuff. Think about it. Every successful mission, every satellite they launch, it creates this ripple effect.
Right.
It starts with direct job creation.
Right.
You've got scientists, engineers, technicians.
Yeah.
Then you've got all the companies that supply parts for the rockets and satellites, the businesses that provide all the logistics and support, the universities that are training the next generation of, space experts.
It's a massive network.
Yeah, it's a massive network of all these different industries that are benefiting from this one industry.
So it's like this space-powered economic engine.
It is.
I never thought of it that way, but it's true.
It is.
So exploring space is good for business.
It's definitely not just about science and exploration anymore. It's becoming a huge economic driver.
Yeah.
And India is really taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
They're using it to boost their economy and really raise their profile on the world stage.
So they're launching satellites, they're boosting their economy, making everyone else wonder how they're doing it so cheaply.
Right.
What's next for them? I mean, what are they looking to do?
Let's just say they've got their sights set pretty high.
Okay.
You know, they started with that humble launch from that church.
Yeah.
Now they're aiming for nothing less than the stars. And trust me, they have a few surprises up their sleeve that I think you're going to want to hear about.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. All right, listeners, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back to reveal those surprises and dive even deeper into this amazing world of India's space program.
It's a wild ride. So one of the most exciting things that they're working on is their planned crewed mission called Gaganyaan.
That's right. Sending humans into space.
Yeah, they're going to...
That's a huge leap.
Send their own people.
What are the challenges with something like that?
Well, sending humans into space is a whole other ballgame.
Right.
Compared to sending a robotic mission.
Yeah.
It requires a whole new level of technology, new safety protocols.
Right.
I mean, the stakes are just way higher when you're talking about human life.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things that they're working on is developing this crew module that can actually withstand the intense conditions of space travel, and especially that really scorching heat of re-entry.
Oh, yeah, when they come back.
Yeah, coming back into the atmosphere.
That's scary stuff.
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest things that ISRO is working on.
Are they building that from scratch, or are they getting help from other agencies?
So they're mostly relying on their own expertise and technology. Wow. Which is pretty incredible considering how complex this is. Yeah. But they're also open to collaborating with other countries where it makes sense. Right. You know, they're all about efficiency and, you know, sometimes that means partnering up to get the job done.
So when is this Gaganyaan mission actually happening?
Wow.
Give me a timeline.
Space exploration's a tricky business. Yeah. There have been some delays.
Of course.
But right now, the current target is sometime before 2030.
Okay.
So
I'll have to wait a little bit.
It'll be a while, but...
But hey, good things come to those who wait, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a huge...
moment.
A historic moment for India when they finally send their own people into space.
Their own astronauts, that's right.
It's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
And speaking of historic moments, I think we should talk about some of ISRO's other achievements that we kind of touched on before.
Okay. Yeah.
We mentioned Chandrayaan and Mangalyaan. Yeah. But I think they deserve a little more attention.
Okay. Remind me what those were all about and why they were such a big deal.
So Chandrayaan, which means mooncraft in Sanskrit, was India's first mission to explore the moon.
Wow.
And so back in 2008, Chandrayaan-1 actually made India the 4th country in the world to plant its flag on the lunar surface.
That's amazing.
And not only that, it also discovered evidence of water molecules on the moon.
What?
Which was a huge scientific discovery.
Damn, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a really big deal.
Okay, so what about Mangalyaan?
So Mangalyaan, which means Marscraft, was India's first interplanetary mission.
Wow.
So they launched this thing in 2013, and they successfully put a spacecraft into orbit around Mars.
No way.
And the crazy thing is, they did it on their first try.
Shut up.
That's something that only a handful of countries have ever pulled off.
Wow.
And India did it on a fraction of the budget of other agencies.
So they're out there exploring the moon and Mars while everyone else is just throwing money away. I mean, come on.
It's pretty remarkable what they're able to do.
What's next? Colonizing Jupiter on a budget.
Maybe not Jupiter just yet.
Okay.
But you're right. They are really challenging how we think about space exploration.
Yeah.
ISRO is showing that you can achieve these really big things if you've got smart engineering and a focus on efficiency.
Right.
And they're not stopping there.
Okay. What else do they have up their sleeve?
So one thing that they're focusing on is developing reusable launch vehicles.
That's huge.
So right now, they mostly use rockets that can only fly once, which adds a lot to the cost. Yeah. But if they can figure out how to make rockets that can fly multiple times,
Like SpaceX?
Exactly like what SpaceX is doing.
Yeah.
That would really slash their launch costs and make space even more accessible for them.
Reusability is the key.
It is. It's the game changer.
Yeah.
And they're also really investing in Earth observation and remote sensing technology. So that means developing these really advanced satellites that can track weather patterns, monitor natural disasters, manage resources, basically gather all this data that can be used for all sorts of things, from farming to city planning.
So they're not just looking outward to the stars, they're looking back at Earth, too.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting, because this data that they're collecting can actually help us address some of the biggest challenges we face here, like climate change, natural disasters. So it's about using space to actually make a real difference here.
In people's lives.
Yeah, back here on Earth.
Okay, so they're exploring the solar system, they're innovating, they're having a positive impact. But how are they actually stacking up against, like, NASA, the European Space Agency, China?
Right, how do they compare?
Yeah, I mean, how are they doing compared to the big boys?
I think that's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
I mean, they're still a relatively new player in the space game. But they are catching up fast. And I think they're proving that you don't need to be a superpower to make a big impact in space.
It's like David versus Goliath, but David has a rocket launcher.
Yeah, exactly. Their focus on efficiency, innovation, just pure ambition. It's making them a serious contender
in this global space race.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
I'm starting to think we shouldn't underestimate them.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, they're here to stay.
They're here to stay.
And they're making their mark.
Yeah, it's really remarkable what they're doing.
It's inspiring.
And I think they're not just following in the footsteps of other space programs.
They're doing it their own way.
Yeah, they're forging their own paths.
Yeah.
They're setting these ambitious goals, and they're achieving them in their own way.
All right, so even with all this success, I mean, they must be facing some challenges, right?
Well, yeah, of course.
Like competing with these big agencies for resources and talent?
That's definitely one of their biggest challenges. Is funding.
Yeah.
So even though their space program is contributing so much to the economy, they still operate on a much smaller budget than NASA and other big agencies.
So it's back to that shoestring budget again.
Yeah. And it's amazing what they're able to do with so little. But there's got to be a limit to how much they can achieve. When you're working with just a fraction of the money that others have, it's amazing what they've done. But at some point, you need more resources to do more.
That makes sense. But what about talent? I mean, they're also facing competition for talent right here at home.
Absolutely.
With this booming private space sector in India. ISRO must be struggling to keep their top people, right?
Right. As private space companies grow and start offering these really competitive salaries, you know, better opportunities, ISRO has to really step up their game to attract the best people.
It's like a double-edged sword, right?
You need a strong private space sector
to push things forward.
For the whole ecosystem. But it also creates this competition for talent and resources.
So it's a balancing act for sure. Okay. Funding and talent are two big ones. What about like the whole geopolitical landscape? Space is getting crowded. And there's a lot of tension.
Tensions are rising.
Yeah,
and I think...
So how is India navigating all of that?
Well, I think they're doing a really good job of trying to balance, you know, international cooperation with also looking after their own interests. So they're actively collaborating with other countries. They're sharing data, joining missions, contributing to the global space community. But they're also very aware of the political realities of space. They know that China's influence is growing in the region, and they see that space is becoming more and more militarized.
So it's a balancing act.
It is a balancing act.
Trying to be a good global citizen while also looking out for their own interests.
Exactly. And I think they're doing a good job of it.
They're playing 4D chess out there.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
I know. There's so much to talk about.
There's so much more to unpack.
I think we could talk about this for hours. But I think for now, let's shift gears a little bit. And talk about the economic side of things.
That sounds good to me.
A little bit deeper.
Because I'm really curious about that.
So let's delve into.
All right, so we'll be right back to talk about the money.
The economic powerhouse that is India's space program.
Okay, so we've talked about India's space ambitions and how they're shaking things up on a budget. But let's talk about the money. How is this space stuff helping the Indian economy?
We mentioned that their space industry added $60 billion to their GDP. But it's not just launching satellites, it's about creating this whole ecosystem.
Break it down for me. How does a rocket launch make money?
Jobs. Think about all the people building a rocket, the scientists, engineers, and technicians. That's a lot of paychecks.
Yeah.
And then there are companies supplying parts for rockets and satellites, businesses handling logistics, and universities training future experts. It's a chain reaction.
So it's a space-powered job creation machine. $60 billion is huge. What sectors are making bank from this space boom?
Manufacturing, for one. They're building more space stuff themselves, creating more jobs. Then there's software and data analysis for all that satellite data.
Right.
Tech companies are making bank from that. Plus, industries like agriculture and disaster management using the data to improve things.
So space is becoming a business tool. It's crazy how something so out there can impact our lives and the economy so much.
Totally. And this is just the start. As India's space program grows and the private sector gets involved, the benefits will multiply.
Speaking of the private sector, India is encouraging private companies to get into space. How's that going? Are these companies making a difference?
They're definitely making a difference. Private companies are popping up everywhere, bringing fresh energy to the industry. We're seeing companies building their own launch vehicles, making it cheaper and more flexible to get satellites up there.
It's like the rise of space startups.
Yeah.
It's cool to see how they're challenging the old ways of doing things in space.
Exactly. It's not just about launches either. Companies are developing high-tech Earth observation satellites taking super detailed images. The data is valuable for everything, from agriculture to disaster relief.
It's like Google Earth on steroids.
Totally. It's about using space tech to solve problems and make a difference.
Okay, so we've got job creation, booming industries, advanced tech, and a growing private sector. Looks like India's doing everything right. Where does this put India on the world stage?
It's clear they're becoming a major power in space. They're launching missions, developing tech, and showing they can compete with the best.
It's like they're saying, hey world, we're here to stay.
Right. And it's not just bragging. This impacts their international relations, economic power, and influence globally.
Okay, tell me more. How does space stuff translate into real-world power?
Think about it. India can launch satellites for others way cheaper than competitors. That's leverage in negotiations. They can share tech and expertise, boosting goodwill and alliances. Plus, their space achievements make them proud and inspire others, improving their global image.
Space is their secret weapon for global domination.
Well, maybe not domination, but it definitely helps them advance their interests and build global relationships.
This has been eye-opening. I thought, India in space, so what? But now I see the ambition, innovation, and impact. It's inspiring.
I agree. India's space program shows what's possible with ambitions, smart engineering, and a pursuit of excellence.
Well, that's our deep dive into India's space program. We hope you learned something new and are feeling that space-age inspiration.
Remember, the sky's not the limit when there are footprints on the moon. Keep looking up and dream big.